Welcome back. Take a deep breath. Because today we're going to talk about something that touches every single life on this planet. It's simply starting over. Not starting better, not starting ahead, just starting over. And somewhere deep inside us, many people live a quiet fear. The fear that the beginning again means that they somehow failed the first time. But what if that belief is the greatest lie we've ever been told? Because the truth is, beginning again is not failure. Beginning again is courage in its purest form. And today we're going to explore the strength, the freedom, and the incredible power that lives inside these words. I will begin again. Because the truth is, life is written in chapters, right? If you think about it. If you really think about all the greatest stories that were ever told, every powerful story, every inspiring biography, every unforgettable hero's journey, they have chapters. Not just one chapter, many. And some chapters are full of triumphs. Some chapters are full of confusion. And some chapters feel like everything's falling apart. But no one chapter is the entire story. And yet, many, many people live their lives believing that something dangerous, this dangerous thing, they believe that the chapter they're currently in, it's the final one. Like everything rests on this chapter. Like if I don't make it through this one, it's all over. But life doesn't work like that. Your story is not one chapter long. Your story is a series of reinventions. Think about it, When you're in high school, it was one life. And when you moved on into either the workforce or into some kind of secondary education, it was another. And some of the courses that you did in high school and maybe in university were great, and some of them were harder. But you got through it. The people who live the most extraordinary lives understand something powerful. They understand that when one chapter ends, the next one is waiting to be written. Because there's nothing more powerful than a blank page. C.S. Lewis once said, "You're never too old to set another goal or to dream another dream." Think about that for a minute. Never too old. Never too late. Never too far behind. Your next chapter is always waiting. And this is evident in my own life and my wife's life. When I met my wife, I was in a position of transition. I was coming out of a really negative mindset and trying to grow and basically heal all my problems. I was in my self-help genre. I was literally focused at that moment that I was going to take care of my emotional, physical, mental, financial, all my well-being, all the different well-beings. I was going to clean them all up so I could become a Buddhist monk. And when I met my wife, it was a period of transition. And it's interesting because she was also in a period of transition. She was a corporate banking manager, and realized that this was not the life for her. So she went down to the States to do Bikram's yoga teacher training. And she came back and left that job. She was also smart. She understood that yoga teaching was not a career, wasn't going to solve all the problems. So she went back to school at the same time for traditional Chinese medicine, became an acupuncturist. And like I said, I was in a transition as well. And when I first met her, I knew that this was a human being I could be with. And then she told me she was engaged, and something in my head, I think it was my own internal advocates, the early form, said, well, that's okay. You're going to be a monk anyway, but this is a human being you need in your life. So let her define what that means and just have her in your life. And I continued down my self-help path. It's interesting. I thought, it's like I risk failure at becoming a monk by thinking about entering a relationship, but then that door was closed. So I continued down my path. Needless to say, about a year later, she broke up with her fiance, and I waited a year and we started dating. And about a year and a half later, we were married. And it's interesting. You could think, well, that was a big failure because now I'm not a monk. Now what do I do? I changed jobs. And it was funny. I was terrified. I knew I needed to do something else. I knew I needed to start over. I knew I needed a massive shift, but it was scary because I'd built my way up into a pretty decent job, but the stress was too much. So I ended up leaving that job, and with the beginner's mind, I went back to school. Now I have a career that I don't know how I ever lived without it. If you want to start again, yeah, it's going to be scary. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah, you're going to doubt yourself at times. Do it anyway. See, one of the biggest reasons people struggle to start over is something psychologists they call it sunk cost thinking. It sounds complicated, but it's kind of simple. Sunk cost thinking says, I've already invested too much time to walk away. Think about all the years that I was in building maintenance and building operations. I've invested all this time, all this energy, all this money, years of effort, years of identity, years of building myself up into a management position, years of believing that this is the path or this was the path. So people say, I'll just stay. They stay in careers that drain them. They stay in relationships that sink them. They stay in identities that no longer fit who they're becoming. Not because they want to stay, but because they believe leaving would mean all that effort was wasted. But here's the truth. Nothing you have ever lived through is wasted. Nothing. I look back, everything I've learned all through the years and the different things I've done, and they all brought me to the point I am right now. In the job I am, like, we leased an office space. I understand all about leasing, maintenance. Everything added. It didn't take away. Nothing you've learned is wasted. Everything I've learned works here. Nothing you have experienced disappears. Your experience builds into what you're going towards. It all becomes wisdom and you carry it forward. Thomas Edison once said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. Think about that. I didn't fail. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. That is the mindset of reinvention. Every step you took, even the wrong ones, taught you something you needed to learn. Yeah. You think about it this way, like when one door of opportunity closes, another one opens, but we sometimes spend way too much time looking at the door that just closed and we miss the doors that open. Starting over doesn't mean you're guaranteed, you start on a path, but it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to go all the way down that path. Because a lot of times off that path is when something branches and takes you to where you wanted to go. But if you never started down that path, you never get to the branch, you never get to the life that has you inspired every day. And that's the way it is. Tony Robbins also said, human beings will do much more to avoid pain than they will do to achieve pleasure. It's kind of like a carrot on the stick doesn't work for a human being. Sometimes people stay where they are because they think the pain of change is so much greater than the pain of the staying the same that they don't change. But here's the hack. Tony Robbins said it easy. It's like, if you want to change anything, you just have to attach more pain to staying the same than the pain of change, and you will just automatically change. So there is a real hard part to changing. And one of the hardest parts about starting over, it's not practical. It's more psychological. Because when you change direction, you're not just changing your path. You are changing who you believe you are. The ego, the sense of the identity, the inner critic. It has a vision of who you are. It's created, it's been reinforced through the years. And that vision doesn't typically move you forward. It typically holds you back, because anytime you challenge that vision of who you are, the inner critic freaks out. Doubt, fear, no, you're going to be all alone. For years, that inner critic said, I am a teacher, I am a runner, I am an entrepreneur, I am a parent, I'm the strong one, I'm the reliable one. I'm the one who always has it together. But then life evolves. And sometimes the identity that once fit perfectly begins to feel like kind of like a costume, something you're putting on. And it doesn't really belong to you because you probably evolved underneath that. And that moment you feel like, what's happening? Everything's falling apart. This can be terrifying because you're not the person you used to be. Then who are you now? The truth is, identity was never meant to be fixed, only in the eyes of the inner critic, the ego. Identity is created. The philosopher Alan Watts once said, you are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. How freeing would that be? You're not trapped by who you used to be. You're not imprisoned by your past decisions. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to reinvent yourself. If you look back into history, you can see it's filled with the people who built extraordinary lives. None of them did it on their first act. Maybe it took them 2x. Maybe it took a third. Maybe it took their fifth. I saw this story about this woman. I think she was 87 and she started painting when she was 80, and she's a master painter. But she never picked up a brush before the age of 80. You know, the world seems to celebrate overnight success, but that's what you see on the surface, because real life doesn't work that way. Real life is messy. It's non-linear. Real life includes all kinds of crazy detours, reinventions, unexpected turns, moments when you're ready to give up and you go one more time. You fall down and I'll get up one more time. You see, many successful people live their entire careers before discovering their true path. I mean, honestly, I didn't figure out what I was supposed to do until my 40s. The point is not how early you begin. The point is whether you have the courage to begin again and again and again, as many times as it takes. Walt Disney once said, "Our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them." And courage does not mean certainty, not even a little bit. Courage means stepping forward even when you don't know how the story will unfold. Stepping forward doubtful, stepping forward in fear, but stepping forward. But there's something you need to do before you begin the new chapter, you know? You must release the old one. And sometimes the hardest part of reinvention is not moving forward, is actually letting go. Letting go of the expectations you once carried. Letting go of the identity that once defined you. Letting go of the version of life you thought would be so. Because many people aren't afraid of starting over. They're afraid of grieving what they left behind. But grief is not weakness. The depth of grief is the proof of the height of love. Grief is simply acknowledgement of something that mattered. And when you allow yourself to release what was, you create a space for what could be. You know, as Joseph Campbell once said, we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And this is the genesis of reinvention. So you got to let go. I often say what you know for a fact limits you to that fact. So as a runner, if you know that's the fastest you can run, you're limited to that fact. If you're a runner that you know, anything you know is limiting you. Even the good stuff. This is why you got to let go. Maybe your experience is like number of injuries over the years seems to happen quite often. You start to believe that's who you are. You got to let go of that too. I don't know, but I'm going to try. So then, what about writing the next chapter? Imagine for a moment that your life is truly a book. And all the writings up to this moment is created as you go. and you just turn the page from a chapter. In this moment right now, there's a blank page in front of you. This is the beginning of a new chapter. What would you write next? Who would you become? What dreams would you allow yourself to pursue? What version of yourself would finally step forward? Because the truth is something people never realize. You're not simply a character in your story. Life is not happening to you. It's happening for you. You are the author. You get to choose the direction. You get to choose the lessons. You decide when one chapter ends and another begins. And the moment you decide to begin again, something powerful happens. Think of it, that subtle shift from hopelessness to hope. Because hope returns, energy returns, possibility returns. They always say it's always darkest before the dawn. You can think about it. At the end of a chapter is really hard because you can feel an ending. An ending is coming. But sometimes it's the end of night and the sun's rising and you're stepping into the light. With the end of winter and spring is a promise. So if you're listening to this today and life has pushed you to a place you've never expected to be, if a door's closed, if a chapter's ended, if a version of your life has come to an unexpected conclusion, I want you to remember something. Starting over is not failure. Starting over is strength. Starting over is courage. Starting over is proof that you're willing to grow, still willing to evolve, still willing to believe that your story is not yet finished. And the most powerful chapters always come just after the moment everything seems to have fallen apart. So take a breath, stand up again, turn the page, pull out your pen and start writing the next chapter of your life. Because your story is far from over. Thank you for joining me again. Hey, if this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone. Someone who might need the reminder that it's never too late to begin again. And remember, freedom will be found in the feeling. Keep moving forward. Keep getting up one more time. And keep building your own inner advocate.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Inner Advocate, a podcast by Kimen Peterson, formerly Conversations with Kimen. If you found value in today's episode, please follow, like, and share the podcast with someone who you think may benefit from it. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and connect on Instagram at your_inner_advocate. Until next time, keep listening to and developing your inner advocate.